Today in the EU, Commissioner Ribera on the political tensions in the way of the clean industrial deal. Teresa Ribera has not been having an easy time in Brussels. In November, the Spanish socialist had a heated 3-hour-long grilling that almost cost her her seat as commissioner. Then, von der Leyen tasked her with one of the most complex mandates of this college, saving the Green Deal, at a time when the popularity of green policy is at an all-time low in Europe, and the moment of truth is in less than a month, on February 26th, to be precise. That's when the rebranded Green Deal will be published. So how is Ribera planning to reconcile competitiveness, the focus of this commission, with her green agenda? Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Giada Santana, and this is Today in the EU. So, I'm here with Donagh Cagney, our Energy, Environment and Transport Editor. So we're about to go into the Commission.
We are going to interview the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Teresa Ribera, who is responsible for the just transition, the clean transition.
Yeah, and it's been quite a hard interview to nail down, right? We've been chasing her for a while.
Well, she's a woman who's very much in demand. Some would see her as the number 2 in the European Commission. And there's been a lot of work she's got to do. We've got a lot coming out in the next month, particularly the clean industry deal as well.
And anything you're expecting or anything you really want to talk about today?
I really want to quiz her on what it's like to be one of the few socialists in the College of Commissioners. As we know, Europe has gone more to the right in the last while, and even more so since the new Commission has been formed, particularly on issues like rollback of the environment protection, things like that. So I just wanted to feel what that's like and what she wants to do about it, what she can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Ribera loves solitude, who knows?
Yeah, it could well be. Let's find out.
Good afternoon, Executive Vice President Teresa Ribera, and thank you for talking to us.
Yes, it's good to be with you in the Berlaymont today.
I'm really interested in the political challenges that come with your mandate. First of all, how does it feel to be one of the last few progressives standing in the Commission?
We will be more. I think that this is a period where the challenges explain to what extent there is this generalized fear to the change. But I think that we make a mistake if we do not face the challenges and we forget about the impact on the people or the mid and long run. I feel comfortable within the College of Commissioners. I think that all my colleagues share this common interest of Europe, independently of their political family. And at the end, the European Union has always been a coalition between the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats since the very beginning. Now we have the Greens, we have the Liberals, and what we need to ensure is that we can still provide the answers and avoid the temptations of some to break the project and to come back to each one going back home.
Speaking of your colleagues, you've mentioned before how important the welfare of European citizens is. And in general, trade unions are concerned about a certain push towards simplification, the simplification shock that has been mentioned in the competitive compass, and how that could impact labor rights. What do you make of it?
What I've heard from unions is that, and I support them, they would not like to see how, in order to facilitate this simplification, we take the minimum common denominator and lower the standards in terms of labor rights. And there I agree. What it may be a point of concern is what it means simplification. Simplification cannot mean deregulation, cannot mean that we do not take care of public health issues at work or in the streets, whatever. How we ensure that the capacity to mobilize and to provide the most efficient use of raw materials and in general terms the impact on the environment are being taken into consideration. At the same time, we also know that we are all used to have the temptation of entering into very small details to be sure and certain that everything is predicted, pre-written in the rules. And this may become a little bit complicated.
So are you supporting the regulation then?
I don't support the regulation, but I understand that there are means to simplify what we are facing, because at the same time, it is also true that in many occasions we go through very similar processes at the different levels of decision. So it is local, it is national, it is European. And sometimes there are even some inconsistencies. This is why, and I hope we can do it, this idea of building a 28th regime for certain activities that can become transboundary activities may be a way forward. This is why when trying to identify where there may be things that are contradictory but that are very close, we need to simplify. What I don't support is the idea that because we need to simplify, we take advantage of the situation and we get rid of everything. That I don't support. So how we can identify the right balance between the two things, avoiding the deregulation or getting rid of things that we know that are important for us.
I guess that's a question for you and your colleagues. So I'd like to address the EPP continued effort to slash environmental targets. Commissioner von der Leyen herself signed an EPP position on slashing renewable energy targets and also signed for the suspension of CBAM. How do you deal with that?
Well, that may be the political position of a group. That doesn't mean that it is part of the legislation or part of the general orientation. And I think that it's a little bit of contradiction when we think on what is the real impact of remaining in something that we do not produce. If we are going to ask for affordable prices in energy, and at the same time we are saying we will be relying on the imports of fossil fuels coming from abroad, it is for sure that we will depend, and the price of the energy depend on how much the importers want to win and how much the suppliers want to win. So that doesn't make much sense.
So you would want a 2040 renewables target?
Of course. I think that is something that it is not precluded, and there may be some willing to get rid of, to confuse, trying to reflect that renewables goes beyond what we consider renewables, and other technologies may be considered as renewables, but they are not. The discussion is whether in terms of each member state, each one tries to decarbonize in the best possible way.
So you'd be opposed to a 2040 low carbon target?
I could support a 24 renewables energy target.
Speaking of party positions, how do you comment the proposal of French MEP Bardella, who asked originally to the EPP to join forces to sink the Green Deal? This proposal has now been taken on by the ECR.
Il faut suspendre le Green Deal. En persistant dans la voie de la décroissance, nous serons condamnés à disparaître.
It is a big mistake that goes against the Europeans. One of the saddest things that we are witnessing and experiencing right now is that there are some political families that use the fears of the people to go against the people. Denying the consequence of climate change is pretty risky. And if we think that we need to go into something that is more resilient in terms of climate impacts, or in terms of ensuring the availability of the resources that we need to provide services, goods, and welfare for all, it is also wise to think that it is easier if we do it in a common way, in a united manner, that if we expect that each of us individually copes with whatever problems we may find in our way.
Indeed, it is understandable, especially after the United States pulled out of the Paris Agreement, that there is suddenly more expectations on the European Union when it comes to leading climate action. However, voters have shown that they are not necessarily as interested in what they used to maybe 4 years ago in terms of green policy. They have other priorities such as inflation, migration. They have therefore elected different types of politicians on the political spectrum. So do you feel cornered in a way because the political climate in the institutions has shifted to the right? Or do you think you have leverage in the incoming negotiations?
I think that too frequently we take for granted things that need to be defended once and again, and that we need to give the explanations and to provide the arguments why they make sense, so that people step up to defend their rights, their freedoms, and their expectations toward the next generations, even the expectations on our own lifetime. And yes, I think that it is quite shocking to see so many things happening around. We were not used to be challenged by other countries that used to be developing countries and that now are superpowers in industrial terms or in digital terms. And we were not used to hear from our great ally, the United States, saying that they don't care about the ways we work together in the global governance, and that they prefer to go on their own, full stop. But I think that in this planet there are 192 countries.
So branching out?
No, I mean there could be many views in the United States too, and I'm sure that there will be opportunities to work together and to recover, to fully recover this spirit coming from the United States, because we all know what it means not counting on this global governance and multilateral system based in the rule of law and of cooperation between the different partners. A chaos, a messy world does not help anyone.
I want to talk about your commissioner hearing. Now, you were grilled quite a bit, not on your mandate or on your proposals for EU policy, but on the environmental disaster that happened in Valencia.
Disponía de la información sobre cauces desbordados en tiempo real y no hizo nada. Conocía el riesgo de inundaciones habituales en esa zona del Levante español y no hizo nada. Señora Ribera, si usted es comisaria, ¿va a hacer lo mismo con la Unión Europea?
How did that feel like? And did that erode trust towards a certain political group or several political groups that one could say exploited the situation for political purposes?
Could it happen in Valencia? Has been terrible, personally terrible for me too. I've been all my life working, warning, and trying to invest in observation and research capacities, in early warning systems, in education, in the public debate, in the responsibility of those being in front of these functions whenever these things may occur. And the meteorological agency performed well. The water administration performed well. And there was this lack of capacity to react and warn in due time to people. In our system, this warning is responsibility of the regional authorities. The warnings were there, but the warning to the public were not there. It was like, well, it's not so worrying. I'm very humble entering into this because I think that there are many people suffering still, not only because there have been more than 200 people dead, but also because of the impact. This shows to what extent this has a huge, horrible economic impact. And we need to learn the lessons from what it happened. What I don't like, and that's something which is very obvious, is that respect from my side was used in a very fake way to undermine the credibility of what it had been done by the civil servants and the researchers, and what it was taken into consideration by some local authorities, preventing people, by the university preventing people, and not by those who were responsible for the general warning.
Who used that respect in a fake way?
Well, I think that it has been recorded, no?
And when you mean respect, you mean your respect to the local authorities?
To the people. Very honestly, to the people. I tried to figure, and I have friends who live in the area. And I have been in the ministry for more than 6 years, and whenever there has been a wildfire, a flooding situation, the system is always the same. The meteorological agency, the water administration sends a warning, and then the coordination of the response measures lay on the regional authority. And if there is any need of help, I get a message that we respect the competence. And I think that it is still too harmful. People is suffering a lot.
As we saw in Valencia, because of the failure of local authorities to show up for citizens, it was up to private individuals, to NGOs, to civil servants in the end to help dig mud and take stock of the situation, which shows the role that environmental NGOs have in society at large. Now, in Brussels, there's been a lot of talk about NGOs funding. What's your take on it? Where do you stand on the issue?
I think this is a perversion.
How so?
Because in fact, it is not lobbying. It is raising public awareness and trying to identify where the difficulties and the challenges may be. And I think that we need that critical spirit in general terms. It is always good to count on sound data that provide space for discussion. What I think it is a big mistake is to waste our time discussing things that are not truth. Being Minister of Environment, of course, I've got thousands of occasions where the NGOs came to say, I don't like this, or what you are doing is not sufficiently good, or this is wrong, or whatever. And in many occasions, I didn't like what they said, or I didn't fully agree on what they said. But it was a very democratic and healthy manner to identify problems that otherwise maybe I hadn't even realized that they existed, or to mobilize people to demand a much more sound approach in terms of policy decisions.
So you think there's an attempt at disinformation?
Yes. I don't think that everybody in this political family may agree on that, but there may be individuals that try to identify ways to undermine the credibility of these institutions.
So you've been outspoken about social policy. What will we see concretely in the clean industrial deal that reflects that?
That is an answer for the 26th of February.
Okay. But we will see something concrete in it.
We'll see.
Are you confident
On the clean
that there will
industrial
be
deal,
social aspects in
Yes.
the clean industrial
Yes.
deal? Beyond skills?
we'll see.
Very, very last question. The competitiveness compass said that competitiveness has to come first. There have also been calls to slash social spending in favor of defense spending due to the war of aggression in Ukraine carried by Russia. Are European citizens going to come second in this mandate?
Well, I think that this may be an overreading of what it's been said in the compass. I think that if there is this general demand to come into an European scenario where industry matters and where we gain competitiveness in basic traditional industry, but also we bet on the most promising new industries, it's for sure that we need private investment. But it is also for sure that we may need to blend this private investment with some public funding. And we have already done it in many occasions. So I think that the level of finance in terms of how much we are ready to invest in creating new opportunities, in appealing innovation, in counting on economic security, not only in Europe, but taking into consideration the global situation, we may try to avoid this being like just wordings without funding.
One very final question, and then we're done. Your colleague Stéphane Séjourné, as Giada said, announced a simplification shock, which would be an aggressive use of infringement measures to make sure member states deliver on this simplification agenda. It's within your mandate to do something similar in your own dossiers. Are you going to deliver a nature shock, a renewables shock?
In the case of energy, climate, and environment, I think that we've seen lots of things happening in the last years. Some of them maybe improve thanks to the experience that we have been getting during these last years. In some other case, what it is important to ask ourselves is to what extent we have developed procedures that fit for purpose, or there may be a need to update and simplify. There are figures that are quite impressive. The number of delegated acts that have not yet been adopted in the last years, coming from what we needed to adopt due to the crisis, is huge. Are we going to adopt every single thing? Everything is consistent. Can we find ways to streamline? So I guess that it is fair to say that we need to have a second view on what we have on the table, to what extent we can be smarter in the way we get the same goals in a simple manner.
So would you like to see Commissioner Roswell, for example, having a biodiversity shock or a chemicals shock in terms of aggressive enforcement of existing rules?
To progress in biodiversity protection, you mean?
Yes, enforcement of EU rules.
I mean, I say that biodiversity conservation is quite important in case if there is someone saying that we need to simplify the way we support and protect biodiversity. What does this mean in concrete terms?
So more flexibility than enforcement on environmental rules?
It depends. I guess that when we talk about biodiversity protection, there are concrete files that are already on the table. And there may be different views on how to proceed in terms of permitting or in terms of the Habitats Directive. But I think that we need to assess case by case what we are talking about.
Thank you, Teresa Ribera.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This was Euractiv's podcast, Today in the EU. Sound design by Miriam Sáenz de Tejada, research and production by Charles Cohen. Visit Euractiv to stay on top of the latest news and sign up for our newsletters. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite streaming platforms. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. It will really help us spread the word about our work. See you tomorrow. As part of our commitment to accuracy, inclusion, and transparency, Euractiv is part of the Trust Project.